meet my friend Arianna. That's so nice. A little intimate talk. I'm Elaine Petrocelli, and I get to choose when I really want to introduce an author, and boy did I want to introduce Arianna. I first started reading Arianna back when she was not Arianna Huffington, but when she wrote the biography of the great singer Maria Callas. And I see that there are people here, including Noah Griffin, who interviewed her back in those days. So some of you may remember, but as we've watched Arianna come up with more and more amazing creative ways to make life more interesting and exciting, I have had the pleasure of reading each of her books. And I do have one problem. I start my day with the Huffington Post, and I end it. I just need to know if Arianna's come up with anything new before I go to bed, and I know that that's probably not smart, because having now read Thrive, I have told myself it has to go off at a certain time, and it's not easy. But I am so pleased that Arianna was willing to come out here tonight, and also that her sister is here. We just for us. When you read the book, you will know why it's so very special that these two sisters are here together. Arianna, thank you for being a book passage once again, and for this truly important book.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, and then Elaine and I will have a conversation. But I love this place so much, and I love the community that Book Passages has created. So when I got my schedule from my publisher about my San Francisco trip, the book just came out on Tuesday, I looked at it and I said, where is Book Passages? I can't have a book tour without Book Passages. And so I'm thrilled that I'm here. I'm thrilled you're here. I apologize for the confusion about when we were starting, but thank you for staying. And this book is my 14th book, and it's a bit of a surprise baby. The book I didn't think I would ever write. But I wrote it because I had a rude awakening myself, a wake-up call about how I was living my life that I started the book with on April 6, 2007, when I collapsed from exhaustion, hit my head on my desk on my way down, broke my cheekbone, got 4 stitches on my right eye, and it started me on the journey of asking the big questions. What is success? What is the good life, as the Greek philosophers used to ask? And I realized that while by conventional definitions of success, and our society really considers only 2, money and power, are successful. But by any sane definition of success, if you're lying in a pool of blood on the floor of your office, you're not successful. So that's when I realized that, hi, oh my God, I didn't know you were here. This is an absolutely wonderful friend and doctor, and I'd love to introduce you later. So that's what really started me on this journey of asking all of us to redefine what success is. And my own redefinition was that success is really about 3 metrics, not 2. And the third metric is what gives life meaning and purpose. And the third metric consists of 4 pillars. And each of these pillars is a section in the book. The first pillar is well-being. Because, you know, if we sacrifice our health and well-being on the altar of success, it's a really crazy decision to make, and millions are making it every day. And so we are now dealing with people who are so burnt out, sleep deprived and exhausted, that their health begins to give way. And we have the data that shows that 75% of our healthcare costs in the States are because of preventable, chronic, stress-related diseases. So that's number one. And throughout the book, I wanted to make very, very specific, small step recommendations. Because the worst thing that can happen is if you read the book and you say, yeah, I agree with her, and go on the same way. Because the truth is that we all know part of this. So the question is, how do we move from knowing what to do to actually doing it? I wrote the book to be a bridge from knowing to doing. So at the end of each section, I have 3 microscopic baby steps that absolutely everybody can take. So it's 3 steps, 4 sections, ended up being 12 steps. I didn't plan it that way. And I won't go through all the steps now, but the first step is very simple. Unless you're one of the really smart, wise people in the world who get all the sleep they need, start by getting 30 minutes more every night. I went, after my collapse, from 4 to 5 hours sleep to 7 to 8 hours sleep. And it made all the difference. And I have 55 pages of endnotes, scientific endnotes, proving how essential sleep is for our brain cells, for our wisdom, for our health, the connection with Alzheimer's, the connection with, today there was an article in Forbes, 3/4 of the tech startup failures in Silicon Valley are due to sleep deprivation. I quote Bill Clinton in my book saying, the worst mistakes I made in my life, I made them when I was exhausted. He did not specify what mistakes. I remember Roger Shaw, my editor at Random House, saying to me, don't you think you have too many endnotes? I said, listen, they're at the end of the book, but I want to convince the most stubborn skeptic that this is not some new agey, flaky California thing about chilling out under the mango tree. This is real science. And we ignore it at our peril. So, very quickly, wisdom. We have amazing leaders all around the world, intelligent, with great degrees, making terrible decisions. It's not that they are not smart, they are not wise. And we cannot connect to our own wisdom if we are perpetually connected to our technology. So just one thing here, one little step. I'm going to give you just one little step of each section and then we'll have our conversation. One of my favorite steps in the wisdom section is, at a certain time at the end of your day, escort all your devices out of your bed. Do not charge your devices by your bed. The science is unequivocal. If you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or whatever, you are going to be tempted to look at your data, right? And if you look at your data, your sleep is not going to be as recharging and regenerating as it can be without. And is it really worth it? Isn't it better to just wake up fully recharged and take on the day and deal with whatever challenges and obstacles we're faced with without being exhausted? I just read my book tour on Tuesday, and wherever I spoke yesterday in San Francisco, including I did this interview with Sheryl Sandberg at the San Francisco Symphony Hall, 2 women came up to me afterwards and said, I don't remember the last time I was not tired. And I said, this is really a terrible thing to say. That basically we think this is normal. Third pillar is wonder. I'm going to take this jacket off. And thank you so much. We are really missing the moment. we're missing the connection with what's happening around us, with the beauty around us. We were driving here. It's just you're living. I mean, I'm living in New York. You're luckier. You're living in God's country. It's just extraordinary. But so often here and in New York, you walk down the streets, and everybody's buried in their smartphones. People are talking on the phone or walking and texting. And I mean, this is another major disaster now, accidents and basically missing the moment. And my mother, that I write a lot about in the book because she lived a third metric life before I knew what it was. And she always used to say to Agapi, my sister and me, don't miss the moment. Because you know what, we cannot DVR our lives. This is it. And one of the things I want to do with Thrive is to bring joy back into our everyday lives. Because for so many years in my life, being a kind of typical workaholic, type A personality, I thought all that mattered was for me to be effective. I wanted to get things done, I wanted to go down my to-do list, I wanted to accomplish things, and now, you know what, I want to bring joy in my life every day. And if I don't bring joy in my life every day, I know that I'm off course. And I need to course correct. That doesn't mean I won't have obstacles and problems every day. I don't think I've ever had a day without obstacles, challenges, and problems. But how I approach them is dramatically different when I focus on this third metric. And the final pillar is giving. And again, the science here is extraordinary, and Anat, maybe we'll talk about that because you know about that. That we are really wired to give. And when we give, the biological inflammation markers that are really precursors of disease go down. And when our life is all about self-gratification, they go up. Now, every life is going to be a mixture. But there are lives that are so narcissistic that it's all about self-gratification. And now, it's just amazing what the science tells us. And I just want the last point to be about, the last point, which is one of the 3 points in giving, it's really about find out what your talent, your creative talent and joy is. Even if it's not what you're making your living from. It could be singing, or cooking, or drawing. Every child is creative, right? And then at some point as we grow up, we basically draw the conclusion, if we can't make a living from that, then we're going to abandon it. And that's such a shame, because we should keep doing it and make it an offering. And before Elaine and I start talking, I'd like to ask my sister to tell you a story that I have in the book, because it happened to her, and I just use it in the book, about what happened to her on a New York bus. And then we transition to our conversation. Sorry to put you on the spot, I had not warned you about that.
My sisters look forward.
Well, I graduated from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts as a very talented and acknowledged actress. Arianna had finished Cambridge, and she was living in London, I was living in London, and through this incredible synchronicity that we have, she found a producer who brought me to Los Angeles to star in a movie. And I was 23 and I thought, this is it, it's happening. Long story short, 2 months later the movie fell apart. And cut a longer story shorter, I think about 6 years I could not land a part. I couldn't land anything, not even a little part. And the universe had another plan for me, I guess. So one day I was in New York, we moved to New York with my mother and auditioned for a 6-hour adaptation of a Greek plays altogether. And I didn't get that part, not even a Greek part in the chorus. the director said I had too much of a big personality to be in the chorus, and I didn't have a big enough name. Although Stassinopoulos is a big enough name, but it wasn't a big enough name in terms of the world to get the leading parts. So I got home, I was crying, my mother said something better will come. I got into a New York City bus to go to my singing lesson. Very depressed, very unhappy. I arrived in the bus and I realized that everybody was way more depressed than me and didn't want anything to do with anybody. I struck a conversation with a woman next to me who ended up being a nurse but used to be an actress and a single mother. And in my sort of Greek spontaneous way, I said to her, would you like me to do my monologue for you? I just auditioned for Joan of Arc. Or Bernard Shaw. She says, I love that part. Before she said, yes, do it, I broke up in front of the whole bus and I said, you promised me my life, but you lied. You think that life is nothing, not being stone dead. And went on to tell my accusers to burn me at the stake. It was quite all right. That God will be with me, because God is always with me. It was a short little monologue. The whole bus woke up. The woman turned to me, held my hand, and said, my dear girl, why are you waiting for anybody to hire you? Go do your own thing. She left off the bus, and I got off, and my life, my friends, changed. At that moment, I realized I had to learn a hard lesson. I had conditioned my gift that it had to go into Hollywood or Broadway, but truly it belonged to give it unconditionally and offer it as a gift. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Thank you for having us.
Very surprised. There's another one back there. Arianna, I'd like to start out with the last time you were here. It was fabulous. You had a huge crowd. We had a great event. And then you were in our cafe afterwards. And I was so impressed because you had a cell phone to your ear and you were talking on it and you were looking at your BlackBerry and typing at the same time. And I admired that so much. And then I read in your book that that really didn't work out very well for you.
No, it didn't. In fact, the last time my mother, who is a big part of the book because the book is very biographical, the last time she was angry with me was when she saw me doing my emails and talking to my children at the same time. And she said to me, and if you think I have a heavy accent, you should have heard my mother. She said, I abhor multitasking. And now science teaches us that multitasking is actually non-existent. It's really task switching and it's the most stressful thing we can do. And yet we all think it makes us more productive.
We do.
And I found that after I started making all these changes in my life, one of the changes I made, which was recent, I didn't make all the changes at once. I just made them little by little. And what happened is that every time I would make a change, I would get such a reward that it would draw me to want to make a little bigger change. But it was very natural and very progressive. And I was talking to the Google employees this afternoon, and I said to them, you like data? Well, experiment with yourself. Because they were all so overworked and so exhausted. I said, just try it out. So that's what I did. And one of the recent changes I made was, I used to think because I run a 24/7 global media company that I had to, the minute I walk into my apartment or a hotel room, turn on the political news. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that I needed more silence in my life. And I said, I would stop doing that. The first thing I learned is that I didn't miss anything. It's just amazing. I mean, you can get the news in 5 minutes, right, on your newsfeed. And now when I turn it on every few weeks, it feels as though I'm watching a rerun. They're still talking about George Christie and the Washington Bridge. Wasn't it like a month ago or maybe 2 months ago? It's like It's the same stuff regurgitated.
Yes. Well, I have to tell the audience, because I've already told Arianna, that reading Thrive has, I don't like people who say, this book changed my life. I always feel so phony. This book changed my life. First of all, I have become insistent on getting enough sleep. And the statistics and the research that you present about sleep is overwhelming. How did you get all this research? Because when I started to tell my friend about it, she said, well, that's Arianna's opinion. And then I said, well, look at page 78. Here's a Harvard study. Here's this, here's that. That's a lot of work to get all that research.
But I felt it was very important to pull all that research. In fact, practically every major university and hospital now has a sleep division. And because I became such a big sleep evangelist after my own experience, I was invited by the Harvard School of Medicine Sleep Division to be on their board. So now I get all the data fed to me every day. and a couple of years ago I gave a TED speech, and the title of the speech was Sleep Your Way to the Top. That's the advice I gave to the Smith College when I did the commencement speech last year. You know what, Ellen, you have to tell them your story.
Oh, about sleep?
And about the 6 a.m. thing.
Yes. Bill and I gave him for his birthday once a Bose radio so that we could wake up to beautiful classical music at 6 a.m. every morning. I gave it to him a very long time ago when our children were in school. Our youngest child is now 38, and we have been having that music go on every morning at 6 a.m. And I read Arianna's book and I thought, what? I love the music, but why do I need it at 6 a.m.? I work nights. And so we turned off the radio, and I get an extra hour's sleep. I feel so much better. It's amazing.
I just love that story. You have to write about it on HuffPost.
Yeah, I will, but I want to tell you, this is how I read this, booksellers get books. These are how I was reading it. I couldn't believe it. One of the things that really amazed me, because I always think if I just worked a little harder, I'd be doing way better. And if I just stay up that extra half hour and work a little more and do a little more data or whatever. And then I read about the statistics you have about the relationship between work in European countries and productivity. And it seemed the longer the people worked in a country, the least productive they were. And I don't think that's logical, but
it's true.
But I tried it, and it's true. And this multitasking, this has got to go. I am not doing well stopping it, I must tell you, but I'm getting there. But one statistic was Greece, which was the #1 European country for overwork. In productivity, way, way down. I loved the Dutch, who's worked the fewest hours and are the 5th most productive. I'm going home. This is, but it doesn't seem logical.
But if you look at sports, which is all about winning, right? Sports is ahead of businesses in incorporating sleep, meditation, yoga, because they see immediately the impact on performance. It's really, all these things are the ultimate performance enhancement tool. Because the truth is that we don't pay people for their stamina, we pay them for their judgment. And if people are exhausted and burned out, whether they are sitting at their desk, updating their Facebook profile or whatever, or they're at home or having a nap, it doesn't really matter. But that's really the big delusion that we're living under. That the more you work, the more successful you're going to be. And it's so funny because I had this conversation with Oprah. I just taped Super Soul Sunday, which is going to air on Mother's Day. And we talked about how for a long time in her career, she would be so exhausted because she was, again, a casualty of this belief that the longer she worked, the more successful she would be, that she would go to bed in her clothes because she was too tired to take them off when she got home. And I looked at her and I said, and I would say the same to everyone, I said, you know what, you would be just as successful because you are successful because of your talents and your gifts and who you are, not because of how many hours you put in every day. And I'm not saying we're not working hard. I'm just saying that the overwork at the expense of renewing and regenerating ourselves does not make any sense, even if all we cared about in life was success. So that's really the delusion that we need to end, also for the sake of our children and grandchildren. Because I have two daughters who are millennials, 22 and 24, and what's happening in colleges is an epidemic of addiction, stress. I don't know if you have children or grandchildren in college, but they're drinking until they blank out. What is that except an incredible expression of stress and not knowing how to navigate their lives? My own daughter, I write about that, 2 years ago got involved in drugs in her senior year at Yale, and I got the call that every parent dreads, mommy, I can't breathe. And the drive from New York to New Haven was the longest drive I'd ever taken. And that was really, for her, her entry point. We all have entry points on this journey. Mine was my collapse. Hers was not being able to breathe. She's been sober for 2 years. She decided to go public and write about it a year ago that I was very proud of because she wanted to help other young people. And I write about how I dealt with it. But my point is that whatever our entry point is, we need to embrace it. And my hope is that people can create their own entry point without having to have a risky and damaging wake-up call.
And one of my heroes from Thrive is your mother. I've decided to adopt her. I hope wherever she is, she and my mother are hanging out together. But the mindfulness of this woman, I know that's a very Marin word, mindfulness, and she probably didn't think of that word. But as you described, her going to the market on the last day of her life, could you tell a little more about that? I mean, I'm going to cry, so I can't.
So my mother, it was incapable of having an impersonal relationship with anyone. She always connected with people. And she was never in a hurry. You know how our modern rhythm is to be perpetually in a hurry. They call it time famine. My mother lived in a very different rhythm. And on what turned out to be the last day of her life, we didn't know. She was very frail by then. She told Agapi and me that she wanted to go to the international market in Santa Monica, where we lived in LA. And she went there and she bought everything. She bought Viennese chocolates and Greek feta cheese, everything she loved. And she spread everything out of the kitchen table and invited everybody in the house, the housekeeper, my office staff. I worked in the office at the time, that was 2000. I worked at home at the time. Her granddaughters, Agapi and me, and we had a feast. And then she went to her room. Christina and Isabella, who were 9 and 11, and were in and out in their new Razor scooters. And my mother just collapsed, fell on the floor. And she just sat there. And when I tried to help her get up, she said no. And she had this incredible authority about her. She was, as a young woman in Greece, she had gone to the mountains and during the German occupation and to save Jewish girls and protect them by being up in the mountains. And when German soldiers surrounded them and said, surrender the Jews, she came forward and she said, there are no Jews here. And they believed her because she had this amazing authority. So suddenly this frail woman turned to Agapi and me and said, do not call the ambulance. And she said, bring a bottle of red wine. And we sat on the floor and we had a picnic. We drank a glass of red wine, we talked, we reminisced, and literally over an hour later, her head dropped, and she was gone. She knew how she wanted to die. And we found out later that she had told the housekeeper that she knew this was the end. She didn't want the housekeeper to tell us. Deborah had been with us for 13 years. But she did not want to die in a hospital. And I write about death in the book, not in a morbid way, but because we just don't discuss it. And as the Onion headline puts it, death rate holds at 100%. So when we incorporate this as a reality in our lives, it just makes our lives richer because we prioritize what really matters. And then we also have conversations as we get older about how we want to die and what we want. And that was the lesson about death and life that my mother taught us, that I included in the book, because I felt it's a conversation we need to have.
And there are a number of parts of the book about your mother that I won't spoil because other people are going to read the book, but I feel that you and Agape are two very lucky women to have each other and to have had this mother. One of the things I love in the book is 10 finger gratitude. And I wonder, now that I'm getting to sleep in the morning, but I think I'm like a lot of other people, it's hard for me to slow down at night. I try to read boring books at night, but sometimes it makes me angry when I'm reading a boring book that this book is even there. So that doesn't always work. But your 10-finger gratitude is one of the best bedtime stories. So I wonder if you could share that, so everyone can sleep tonight.
That's one of the 12 steps. And it's really to just count on your 10 fingers, 10 things you're grateful for. And they could be really tiny things. I mean, I'm grateful for this fabulous soy cappuccino. I recommend it. And that helps us bring into a state of grace, because gratitude and grace have the same root. And so often we have a tendency to focus on what is negative in our lives, and every life is a mixture. And before we go to sleep, it's so important to just focus on all that we're grateful for. And just let the other stuff be. We can handle it in the morning. And it's a very simple exercise. My daughter Christina, has been doing just 3 things that she's grateful for every night, and shares it with 2 friends, and they share their gratitude list with her. So we have to adjust all the steps to see what works for us. The important thing is, how do we end the day?
One of my favorite chapters in the book is the part on wonder. And again, I think of your mother with wonder. I was telling Arianna as I came tonight, I was stressed because I was in traffic, as were all of you, I know. And I thought I was late, and I hate to be late. And just as I turned off the freeway, I looked up at Mount Tam, and there was a necklace of fog around the top of Mount Tam. And I thought, Arianna's mother must have sent that. Take a deep breath, and don't worry about this traffic. But you bring so many things about wonder into that.
Yes, in fact, I opened the wonder section with my experience when I was in Munich, launching the Huffington Post in Germany. And on my way back to catch the plane to New York, it was raining, and everything was glistening. And it was a new city for me, everything looked magical. And I arrived at the airport, and everybody was complaining about the rain. And I realized, as I write in the book, that at a different time, in a different city, maybe even most times in most cities, I too might have been annoyed by the rain. But at this particular time, in this particular city, what came to my mind instead was a poem by Albert Hofstadter. I know his name sounds German, but he's from Texas. And his poem is, "We forget we're mostly water, till the rain falls, and every atom in our body starts to go home. And I put a lot of poetry in the book because I feel poetry sort of touches something in us and connects us more with that third metric.
Absolutely. The poetry and the quotes are beautiful. There's one from Einstein that
I wonder.
that I wrote down. Now I can't find it, of course. But there's just beautiful, beautiful quotes in here. There's a terrific part about volunteering. And here in Marin, we have a little girl who became very upset, and I know a lot of you know about it, because she read about slavery, child slavery in the world. And so she opened a little lemonade stand in Fairfax, and she did something that maybe I should do here at Book Passage. She told people to pay whatever they wanted to for the lemonade. By last year, she had raised $200,000. She had her whole family and the whole community. She's actually written a book. She's coming here May 3rd. But I thought about this family that taught their daughter and their whole family volunteering together. And when I read your book, it made me think any family should be able to do this.
Yes, I write in the beginning chapter about the importance of teaching this to children at an early age. And I write about the experience with my own daughters. When we lived in Washington, I had the children volunteer at a place for at-risk children in Anacostia. And by coincidence, one day, we were there with Isabella, my younger daughter, who was 5. And the day before, she had celebrated her 5th birthday party with balloons and presents and birthday cake. And that same day, a little girl there was celebrating her 5th birthday party. And the entire celebration was one chocolate chip cookie. That was her birthday present and her cake. And I could see from across the room Isabella's eyes filling with tears. And at the end, she rushed to me and said, "Mommy, I want to go home, collect all the presents I got yesterday and bring them to this little girl." Now, Isabella did not turn out to be Mother Teresa. She had plenty of moments of selfishness since. But that one experience taught her something that I could never have taught her, no matter how many lectures I had given her. That's why I think children like the little girl with the lemonade stand have to have their own experience. And all we need to do is to make it available for them. And then they will make that connection themselves and in some way or other incorporate it in their lives.
And what a rich life when you have that with you. I could go on and on forever, but I bet there's some of our friends here who have some questions for you, Arianna. Does anyone have a question? You've all thought of everything? Oh, I see.
Please, whoever has a question, give us your name and what you do and how many hours sleep you have.
And are you available?
Yeah, hi, my name's Dan Siegel, and I blog for HuffPo, and
Yes, thank you so much.
and thank you for the invitation. And my wife and I actually run programs in the Isle of Patmos, Greece, which you know well, to try to get people to slow down, live a third metric life. We try to get sleep while we're doing that, but I was wondering if you could talk about being raised in Greece and what that means to you in terms of the wisdom that informs this book around living an examined life.
Well, first of all, the island of Patmos, where you do these amazing programs, is just such a special island. That's where John the Beloved wrote his gospel, and I don't know if you all heard in the back, but what they're doing is they're helping people learn how to slow down. And it's really a lost art. It's really the art of learning how to pause. That's really what we've lost. And I think that was like an essential part of Greek culture in ancient times, because it's really, yes, we can be very intense and work very hard, and then we pause and regenerate. And also small pauses during the day. my thread through the day became my breathing. Learning to take 10 seconds, 20 seconds to just focus on the inhale and the exhale of the breath can transform our stress. And it's so simple, but it just connects us with ourselves. And I do that constantly, in boring board meetings. I now can do it without closing my eyes. And we all can find little tricks that we can do during the day, because I think the problem is not stress, because stress is part of life, is the accumulation of stress. Until by the time you go to bed, you're so wired that you can't really calm down, and that's when it's hard to sleep.
Yeah.
Another little trick that I do every night is have a hot bath. Because it just helps say, this is it, the day's done. It was what it was. And, as the Bible says, let the dead bury the dead. The evil of today is enough. We're moving on.
The lady way back there, maybe in the
My
hallway.
my name's Lisa, and I love to sleep. My question is in my business, even though I love what I do, I am running a business, and there's a lot of decisions that I have to make. And I find that perpetual making decisions, that sense of responsibility, can be very stressful. And I'm imagining in your life, you have a lot of decisions to make. So anything that you want to share about in the moment, what helps you, and then also in the bigger picture?
So the question is about, thank you, about making decisions. She runs a small business, a lot of decisions to make. How can you make that less stressful? So for me, the first thing is learning to live with incompletions. Because especially those of us who are like obsessive perfectionists, feel that somehow you have to complete everything before you go to bed. You have to answer every email. And then it dawned on me, all these realizations were after my collapse, that you don't. That you just have to do the most important things. And the same goes with decisions. And my mother used to say, if a decision is not clear, my mother used to say, let it marinate. It may mean that you don't have all the information you need. It may mean that you need to wait. And sometimes we just rush to make a decision, even though something doesn't feel quite right. That's why I have a whole section, how do we learn to listen to our intuition? And when the intuition speaks, how can we learn to shut up and listen? And one more quick thing about that. I do kind of regular life audits in my mind, because so often we start a lot of projects in our mind that we may never really start in life. Like my major life audit when I was 40, I just looked at the projects I had said to myself I was going to do. I wanted to learn German, I wanted to learn to cook, I wanted to become a good skier, among other things. And I realized, I was never really going to do these things. Because there are other things I wanted to do more. So I learned something at that moment. I learned that you can complete a project by dropping it. I dropped becoming a good skier, and now when my children want to go skiing, I just sit by the fire and read a great book and have hot chocolate.
That's great. I think there's a question way back there. The man with the woman back there. Yes.
Hello. I wanted to let you know that you are a huge inspiration to me and millions of young professional women. And I wanted to ask if you're a spiritual person or if there's a religion that you follow.
Yes, I definitely call myself a spiritual person. Not any particular religion. In the book I write about how the esoteric, the mystical part of every religion, whether Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, is really the same. At the heart of it is what the Bible calls the kingdom of God is within. Archimedes, my compatriot scientist, said, give me a place to stand and I can move the world. That's the same thing. But also, the book is written for people who are atheists, provided they are willing to recognize there is a mystery in life and who may not know what that mystery is. And I was having lunch today with Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, and he said to me, I call myself a mystical atheist. And I love that, because it's like somebody who says, I don't think there is a God or a higher power, but hey, this place is pretty mysterious. And there's so much we don't know, and this is exciting to just explore. I personally think that I know there's fascination with exploring Mars and Venus and all the other planets. For me, the inner space project is much more exciting.
The lady right there.
Hi, my name is Katie Draper. I'm 22. I just graduated and started working. And I was wondering if you had any advice for young people just starting their careers and going into the workforce and facing this kind of very high pressure, like sink or swim environment where it's very much like you have to pay your dues and you have to be there all the time, and you have to make yourself available. And that's kind of the environment that we're facing. And so I was wondering kind of what your advice is for young people starting out.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here, because I have two daughters who are 22 and 24. And so I think you have all your life ahead of you. And if you kind of apply some of these things now, your life is just going to be amazing. And I think what is important is to start with this level of trust. I quote the poet Rumi in the book, who said, live life as though everything is rigged in your favor. So that is incredibly important, no matter what happens to you. Let's say you're in a job now, I don't know what job you're in, but let's say you're in a job where you have a kind of old paradigm boss who still is mired in the pre-Copernican past of thinking that overwork is the way to success and achievement. Let's create a caricature of a boss, right? And a culture and an environment. You don't have to buy into that. And you can either stay and learn from that, but without internalizing it. And setting up your own boundaries, because you can work incredibly effectively and creatively within normal working hours. And if there is a big project and a deadline, sure. You can put the extra hours and then take time to renew yourself. But if this is the kind of environment that we've had in the finance industry, then it would really be sabotaging yourself to stay there. I mean, we see, the spate of suicides in the finance industry that led companies, including Goldman Sachs, to issue a new directive to their young analysts to say, you know what, take a weekend off, which is a radical thought in the investment banking industry. So, always remember you have choices. And that doesn't mean just walk off. It means seeing, can I make this work for me in a sustainable way without burning out? Or do I trust that there's something else for me there? And here's the great thing, you will have the wind on your back because the world is changing. We are now at this moment when you have these two worlds, the old and the new, coexisting. So you have 35% of American companies introducing some form of stress reduction programs in their companies. I have a lot of examples in the book. And we have the rest who are the old paradigm. And also, there are more and more ways to make a living now. You don't have to work for someone. You can start your own business. You can be part of Etsy.com. I went to speak to them there. There are people who just decide to make a living through following their passions, the craft they love, whatever it is. Everything is shifting.
Yes, sir.
you have a great capacity for communicating news and other things. And I have the idea, not original, that we're all providers and we're all patients. You've exhibited a lot of the ways in which you are a provider for patients as well as yourself. And my concern is to convey that concept to more people, that one does not need a PhD or MD, but that there's a great deal of experience among many people who've had a decent life and have been out in the world. So the question is, how does one realize and help the medical profession and those who are hung up on you've got to follow these regulations and laws to convey this concept that we're all providers?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, Anand Baniel, who is here, who is an incredible health practitioner in a way that's not. Actually, Anand, I'd like you to say something about the work you're doing. Anand has worked with me, and she's really wonderful. And we are finding that more and more people now are looking at not just the traditional way, Western ways of surgery and medication, although these are all very legitimate and needed, but also other ways to encourage the healing process.
So what would you like me to talk
Just
about?
say a bit about your work, just a minute,
Yeah, okay. All right, so, hi everybody.
I keep bringing people up, maybe your turn next.
Beware, yeah. Well, my background is in psychology and dance and actually the sciences, but it's evolved into working both with adults, amazing people like Arianna, and actually I think all people are amazing, and also a lot of children with special needs. That focusing on the ability of the human brain to change very rapidly and in a very potent way when given the right conditions. Mm-hmm. So basically, I just see people I know one after the other. She's an amazing one. Bring her up. I'm going to look over. Bring her up. So, and one of the, can I talk just 2 more minutes about you?
No,
A little bit? No, I was going to say, as an example.
Don't talk about me. I think the important thing here is that there is more and more scientific evidence about the plasticity of the brain. And I quote in the book Richard Davidson, the neuroscientist of the University of Wisconsin, who has done amazing work that has proved that happiness is a learned skill. And he has literally put electrodes and done MRIs on Buddhist monks who've been meditating for years to show the kind of gamma waves that they produce. And this is a very exciting thing, because if happiness is a learned skill, we can all learn it. For me, it's easier to learn happiness than to learn tennis or golf because I'm so terrible at sports. So that's really part of your work, and I think it's also a big part of modern science. Okay, you're no longer on the spot, you can pass it on your life.
What is your name? Would you give your name again?
Oh, Anat Baniel.
Annette Baniel. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, so much.
Yes. And shall we take a couple more questions, and then we'll let everybody get books signed? Sir?
In the work that I do, I write books on critical thinking and test taking. And I notice the main problem in the nation now is that everybody is looking for an answer and they don't get the enjoyment out of the process. Einstein himself even said he was disappointed when he got the answer to his solution because he lost the process. And if we can I get fired up when I do the process, and the answer I'm somewhat disappointed, because that's the end of it's like listening to a piece of music, and you hear the music, and it's over and that's it. So I am a big advocate, in fact I've been writing a lot about this, getting people, especially on tests, don't worry about the answer, get interested in the process, get interested in going from one step to another, and while you're doing it you get fascinated and you say, I didn't know this could happen like that. And this is what I think we're missing in this nation. Everybody wants a bottom line answer. I think television does this. I think the computer does this. They don't use the computer for the right things. They should use it to get information, but to help them go through the process.
I love that because it's also a metaphor for all our lives. If we live our lives simply looking at the next goal, then we achieve the next goal, and then we're looking at the next goal. Then when we change the way we're looking at that, and I mean, one of the poems I have here is by Cavafy, Ithaca, which is all about the journey. Because in the end, that's all we have. So whether it's educational testing or the goals we set ourselves, it just transforms our experience of life.
I see someone way back by the window, so because you've been so patient, would you like to, can you ask your question so we can hear it?
Sure. For someone who has been involved in political circles, both as a participant and as an observer, I'm curious as to what sort of transcendence you've gone through with all of this and how that's impacting you, both personally and professionally, in dealing with that arena in the future.
So that's very interesting because I think right now politics in this country is going through such an incredibly dysfunctional process that I just don't see any big solutions coming out of politics. It doesn't mean that's still not very important and people need to stay involved in the political process. But I'm much more interested in terms of what I do with my energy to look at the other side, which is the recognition that the fate of humanity, something as epic and grand as the fate of humanity, really depends on the individual choices each one of us makes in terms of how we live, what we think, what we give, and how we love. And that is really, right now, the most important realization I have. And we all have our own dharma, our own work to do. But I feel that's what I want to put my energy in my remaining years here. Because I see what's happening as people are re-examining their lives, making different decisions, and it is so exciting. I have never enjoyed a book tour as much as this one, because I'm having real conversations with people. I have been very vulnerable in the book, so people are being vulnerable with me. We're having real intimate conversations. And I think the times demand that, and what excites me is that we are getting close to a critical mass of people changing with these microscopic little changes. And when we get to the critical mass, then suddenly everybody will begin to change, and we'll wonder, how come we ever lived like that? And that's very exciting to me, because when even if you look at something like the environment, I really think if we continue burning out, we'll continue burning up the planet. If we continue not showing compassion to ourselves, we will not really show compassion to others. Everything is connected. And I mean, just one thing that astounds me every day is that we take so much better care of our smartphones than of ourselves. We begin to get alerts on our iPhone, 20 minutes of battery remaining, 17 minutes of battery remaining. And immediately we look around and see, where are all our recharging shrines in our offices, in our homes, and we charge our devices. I traveled with 2 portable charging devices, just in case, my God, this thing dies. And when it comes to ourselves, we have to be below 0 battery and crash before we even are aware of the fact that we've run out of battery. We need to change that and reprioritize what's the most important thing. Our human capital is infinitely more important than all our devices, or our financial capital.
we could stay all night. And look at all these questions, I don't know what to do. I think I'm going to have one more from Lisa over here.
Arianna, you serve on boards, you're a CEO, you have an overlord company. And I'm just wondering how your book, which I'm sure you have shared with all of your fellow board members, how they are responding to the messages in your book.
So the question
And I'm sure
is-
they're mostly men.
Yes, the question is how do men, CEOs, and other people respond? Well, here's what is amazing. 2013 was the year when one male CEO after another came out, not as being gay, but as being a meditator. It's quite amazing. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, said that, I've been meditating for 25 years. I asked him, I said, Mark, why didn't you just say that in 2013? Why didn't you say it in 2012? Because it wasn't really safe. A lot of them running public companies didn't want to be seen as flaky, new agey people. And Ray Dalio is the head of the biggest multi-billion-dollar hedge fund in America. He came out recently saying, I've been meditating for 39 years. I consider it the most important thing I've done in terms of my success. Mark Bertolini already mentioned, I have them all in the book because I wanted again to give evidence to other men that this is safe. The water is safe, you can go in. And when I talk about meditation, please use whatever word you want to substitute. If prayer is the word you resonate with, if it's contemplation, if it's fly fishing, it doesn't matter. It's like time, quiet time. It's going to be different for each one of us, and that's what's different about our times. But CEOs are coming out now, and we had Mark Benioff was also the first person among the 1,000 people who were at Steve Jobs' memorial to tell us that Steve Jobs' last wish was to give all his friends at his memorial a brown box with the book that had been the most important book in his life, and that was the Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda. So we're living through the most amazing times. I think the shift is equivalent to moving from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. And I'm beyond excited that we're living through this time, and that each one of us can help accelerate the new reality and the new era. So thank you for being part of this journey. And thank you